given that I want to be conscious of everyone's time, I'm going to go ahead and start with a brief introduction. And then I'm going to hand it over to Lorenzo, who's going to moderate the chat with Christian. So first of all, thank you for joining us today, not just on this call, but at this really exciting moment in human history. I think the fact that we're able to have a call like this where we're talking about longevity is really a breakthrough, and it's against the backdrop of extraordinary things happening in laboratory settings, gene editing technology, advancements in stem cell therapies, AI-driven diagnostics, quantum computing in modeling complex biological processes. I mean, the stuff happening in longevity science is truly groundbreaking. But I think it's important to take a step back for just a few seconds and say, what is it that we're talking about when we talk about longevity? And for me, at least, longevity is really about prevention. It is a really powerful framework that gives us, for the first time, a really methodical way to prevent disease rather than to reactively treat it. So the topic of today's talk is investing in longevity. And I thought to kick things off, I'll just give a few facts and figures. In 2013, total investment in longevity was $538 million. In 2022, that exploded up to $7.18 billion. And that's really exciting because it means investment in longevity is really expanding. And that does sound like a lot of money, which is great. However, I wanted to put that number in a bit of context because a lot of people say, oh, there's so much money being put in longevity and there's all of this excitement, but it's really a drop in the pond. And what I mean by that is, if you look at how much the US spends in managing chronic disease a year, chronic diseases per year, based on the CDC, that's $3.7 trillion spent a year managing chronic diseases that could be preventable by keeping people young and biologically healthy. So broken down, just a couple of facts and figures. In the US alone, we're spending $216 billion a year just on heart disease, managing heart disease. Cancer, $240 billion a year, projected by 2030. Diabetes, $327 billion a year as of 2017. Arthritis, $140 billion. Alzheimer's, $305 billion a year that we are spending to manage these diseases. So I think that there's a lot of work to do. And if we have success with longevity science, what we're really going to be starting to see is a lot of these figures coming down as we delay or eradicate these entirely, if possible. So we're really excited to have Lorenzo and Christian here on the call. I'll give a brief introduction to Lorenzo. And then he's going to introduce Christian and start a dialogue. So Lorenzo is a distinguished serial entrepreneur and investor known for his strategic intersections of technology, art, commerce, and social value. Beyond his success in co-founding companies like PowerSet and notable achievements in Broadway productions, Lorenzo has carved a niche for himself in the longevity and health optimization space. His personal passion for enhancing human health and performance is translated into a series of targeted investments in cutting-edge health technologies. Among his notable contributions to the field are investments in Whoop, Levels, Vessel, Better Brand, Aura, Recess, Ergata, MiniCircle, Loyal, and Renewal, as well co-investing with Christian in a number of longevity biotech companies like Rejuveron, Cambrian Biopharma, and Atai Life Sciences. Through his involvement with Angels, these companies represent the forefront of health and wellness technologies, focusing on everything from wearable fitness and health tracking devices to nutrition and longevity research. His role as an active investor and advisor in these ventures underscores his belief in the power of technology to enhance human well-being, positioning him as a key figure in the push towards a future where longevity and health optimization are within reach for all. So, Lorenzo, thank you very, very much for being here, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Simon. This fun fact, Christian and I have exchanged many, 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 many emails to this day, and I think this is the first time we actually ever talk in person or live in this way. So this is exciting in so many different ways.
Like we know since ages.
But
way back.
Yes, and you know the geographic distance doesn't help. I can't just run into you, Christian, right around the street. But just want to kind of do my bit reading your bio, but then we're going to get right into the conversation. So bear with me. Christian Angermayer is a visionary entrepreneur and investor deeply involved in the advancements of the next human agenda, focusing on technologies that enhance human lifespan and quality. As the founder of a parent investment group with over $2.5 billion under management, Christian's influence spans across life sciences, fintech and crypto, future tech, and beyond. His significant contributions to the field of psychedelics through atai life sciences aim at revolutionizing mental health treatment. And furthermore, Christian's passion for longevity is evident in his founding of biotech companies like Rejuveron Life Sciences and Cambrian Biopharma, which are at the forefront of developing therapies to extend human life and health spans. His broad portfolio reflects a commitment to leveraging technology for enhancing human health and happiness, making him a leading figure in the investment in life-extending innovations. Christian, so nice to get to chat. I just want to kind of, first of all, much because like the reaction to Simon reading my bio is like, basically, I'm just interested in this stuff. I want to pass that on to you and say like, how did you get interested in this stuff? Why is this, and by this, I mean, sort of the focus on helping humans maximize their potential, either through aging, through health, through performance. Why is this something that matters to you?
Well, because I'm interested in, like, I think this is like the, by the way, in general in biotech, but especially in, I think aging and mental health, which is the other big sort of biotech topic we're doing. It's literally, I'm not joking, like what I want to be. Like, if I'm very honest, like, and by the way, like every other human being, like, what do we all want? Like, we all might have different interests in the details, but if you boil it down, every human being wants to be happy. Every human being wants to be healthy. And once you're happy and healthy, you want to do that for very long. Yeah. So it was literally that, like being in biotech, I was like, okay, like in my early 30s, I'm starting to age, which sucks. Like, I don't think also like people sugarcoat it always, like, and it's not. Yeah, it's not good. So, and I was like, okay, like being in that industry myself, yeah, I want to do it primarily for me. And then obviously it's also a massively sort of big market. So yeah, so but I came into it both psychedelics and biotech sort of out of positive self-interest and knowing that it's maybe the only business in the world, longevity and happiness, which has a really 100% total addressable market, because again, every human being wants it.
It's also so kind of intrinsically part of the human quest, like, you know, just the human life quest, that if you go back enough in centuries, you find literally snake oil vendors and so on, like selling the potion for eternal life or the rejuvenating potions. I mean, this is part of the very nature of the storytelling of human beings since very, very long ago, isn't it?
Yes and no. And I think the interesting thing is that, as in many other things, the Catholic Church really messed it up. Because like, yeah, so if you go back actually more into like the classical period or before, like sort of in everything before yeah, Catholic Church, indeed, sort of the quest for immortality, the quest also for not aging, it was always combined beauty and sort of living long, was not just very visible, but it was very noble. And if you go actually, if you look in all the pre-Catholic Church sort of mythology, aging, or sorry, immortality, or the gift of immortality, was always bestowed on the very best, on the heroes, on people who have achieved a lot in life. The gods normally then, as a gift, gave longevity, immortality, whatever. By the way, behind me, it's very because it's angels. Like that's one of my most favorite both stories, but also like it's a 2,000-year-old mosaic portraying the story of Ganymede, which is, by the way, kind of one of the first longevity stories, because Ganymede was said to be the most beautiful person in the entire ancient world, and then Zeus fell in love with him. But Ganymede didn't want to, but then he negotiated well, or actually his father, and sort of he negotiated immortality for one date night, yeah, which is a trade we all would take. And then actually, so Zeus turned into an eagle. They did what he wanted to do, but then he made him actually the immortal cupbearer of the gods and the star sign. So he got his immortality for a little bit of fun. So, but it was always a topic. So and then Catholic Church came, and their whole narrative was, oh, God will judge you, so there is Judgment Day, and if you pay us money now, you gonna do better in the afterlife. But hence, everybody who wanted to avoid the afterlife by staying here for longer ruined the business model of the Catholic Church. So, and you really see that shift. So in the moment, and it just happened, like not at the beginning, it happened when they really started taking money for, what's the English term, for forgiving the sins, which was roundabout, when did they start it? Like roundabout 1000 AD. In that very moment, the whole narrative changed, and then suddenly just the bad people wanted to live forever. Vampires, monsters, whatever, yeah? And it was all because like, hey, you should die soon and pay us money before and not avoid judgment. That was so now we're going back actually to the classics period, saying, look, hopefully the good guys live forever.
So, but there is one thing that, you mentioned that remains the same, and I think it's a really important piece of our conversation around investment and innovation as well, which is unfortunately money, right? And sort of the fact is that you mentioned just how all of a sudden it was when the Catholic Church was no longer, or kind of was in danger of losing its monopoly on money in exchange for eternal life of their kind, right? Yeah. That things kind of started to shift. But before that, there were still many people trying to hawk solutions for rejuvenation, or for youth, or for beauty, or for long life, that ultimately were of various degrees, ways of people to recognize that this is something that people care a lot about. It matters to people that they stay healthy, that they stay young, that they stay beautiful, that they live, like you said, a happy life for as long as possible. And there's always someone out there that is ready to take advantage of it, whether it's the Catholic Church or whether it's a fraudster. And I think, yeah.
But the good thing is now we come, let's say maybe there were fraudsters, or there definitely were, because we didn't have anything so far. But I think now it's changing, because obviously now we're sort of finding real solutions with, at the moment, still smaller effects. But I think over the next 10, 20 years, we're going to find solutions which really have bigger effects, both on health span and lifespan.
I'm 100% with you. I just wonder, how much do you constantly have to, as an investor, but also as someone that is really well read in these things, how much do you always have to stay alert on the PR aspect? Because there will always be people who are ready to say, this can't work, this won't work, you're making it a bigger deal than it is. And I think it's a really important kind of aspect of how scientists and science is now needing to kind of really up the ante for how to demonstrate that these, as you said, maybe small effects are actually real.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, at least when it comes to us at Pyron, we're very focused on the biotech side, so not so much on the supplement or whatever. So I always say, like, we're using that term longevity, we meaning all of us, in two very complementary but still very different things. So the one is like, what can you really do right now today? Yeah. So, and then you come to a lot of things like, which by the way I do, and which all are great, like whatever, NAD plus, and do this and do that. By the way, very basic stuff like sleep enough, do enough sports, whatever. But so you can do things at the moment to age healthier and maybe a tiny bit to slow it down. But I always say, like, but there is nothing you can do, even if, like, even Brian Johnson, like, all what he's doing is he's using things which are available now. Yes, and that's, again, in a very extreme way, how he's doing it, it's slowing down aging a bit. Yeah, it makes you look better and all of that, but nothing will make you live, what you can do now will make you live till 150. There's nothing here. So at Apeiron, we're focusing very much on what I would say real longevity, but again, it's very complementary, where we say we want to develop new medical drugs, which are not on the market by definition, because we're developing them, which really push life expectancy significantly. Yeah, still gradually, it's not going to be a jump, but like really have a novel impact. So the good thing is these are all medical drugs we need to put through FDA approval processes. And by that, coming to the PR question, we have like an undisputed fact. Like, it's not sort of a supplement where we say maybe it does something, maybe not. No, all what our companies are doing, Rejuveron and Cambrian, yeah, they're doing clinical trials, FDA framework, so that whatever comes out of it, if it works, we can say, look, it does work, full stop. Yeah, there is no.
So I think you'll find maybe critics will say, well, this is great, but a lot of the longevity effects for reasons that are kind of intrinsic to the scientific process have been determined on animal models, where you can kind of detect changes in lifespan within multiple times within the lifespan of the person who's doing the experiments. And it becomes significantly harder to do that in a meaningful way when you're doing it in humans. What is the way that kind of you think we're going to be able to prove and to show meaningful impact on life extension in humans, if not waiting 30, 40, 50 years?
Yeah, no, that is sort of still, it's hopefully someone, there is a kind of, let's call it a deal or a with the FDA, but like still that is the biggest problem of the industry, that there is, so practically you have waiting 30 years is not an option, by the way, because also nobody can finance these trials. Even if we wanted to wait, yeah, it's too long. Second, and it's not financeable. Yeah. So second, what we're working on is getting biomarkers sort of approved, like, and that's an industry thing. It's not us, like, but there's an industry association where we say, hey, you can measure age. Yeah, and we just need to agree with the FDA. And once you agree with the FDA, that's kind of, again, the gold standard that we can show slowing down of aging. Until this happens, yeah, all the longevity drugs are indeed approved for a very, let's say, normal, ordinary disease. And then what you can then do, you can do post-marketing studies who are cheaper because you don't need to follow the super rigid framework size of an FDA trial, and can say, okay, if this drug is on the market for A and people start taking it though for normal longevity, yeah, let's see. But then you need time again, unless you agree on biomarkers, which I hope we will, yeah, very soon. And it's going to be a mixture. By the way, I don't think something is happening in 12 months, like many, or something, things are happening in 12 months, but I think we really need the next 20 years, because in 20 years, you're gonna have new drugs approved. We're gonna have agreed on biomarkers. And then for some of these drugs, you're at least gonna have 10-year data, again, by people using it either for what it's mainly approved, yeah, or off-label already for longevity, and then you collect data. So what I always tell people, there won't be that one headline, for many reasons, by the way. Also, meaning, I think everybody knows here, but always mentioning, we always simplify and say we're talking about aging. Yeah, but aging is not a single disease. It's anyway many things we need to solve at the same time. Yeah, and by the way, my expectation is that once we've solved some of them, and whatever, at just 5 or 10 years life expectancy, let's say from 85 to 95, then we're going to find out there are going to be new problems we haven't thought about. Like, it's going to be a continuous sort of rat race of problems we need to solve. I just think there will be this one sort of year somewhere in the next, again, 10, 20 years where we solve more and quicker than problems arise. And then practically you can go on for hopefully a very long time. Yeah, but again, it's going to be always a gradual shift. There won't be that, for many reasons, that one day we wake up and read the newspaper, now we're going to live till 200. It's just going to be a gradual thing. But we're going to feel it, like, as society. Because, by the way, let's go 1 second away from individual health. already when we shift life expectancy, healthy life expectancy 5 years, sounds not a lot, that's gonna change so many things, including it's gonna break all healthcare and pension systems in Europe and most likely in America. Like, yeah, so what I'm saying is like the shifts will be visible and talked about, if not for health reasons, for the very banal economic reasons. Already some years of more life expectancy will sort of create.
I know. I feel like if you take a sample of 100 people and you ask them, "Do you want to live 20 years longer?" They'll probably all say, most of them, I would say yes. And then you ask them, "Do you want to work 20 years longer?" I think you'll get a very different answer back.
They're gonna have to, yeah. But yeah, but I think it's weird because, by the way, on a separate note, I think just like it's not scientific, but I do think it's even connected. I think when people get bored, they're gonna die sooner. So I think, I mean, the definition of work is maybe the case, but like if you just take sort of purpose away from people and just add life expectancy, it's going to be a different problem. I think people they might say funnily, or they might think even that they don't want to work 20 years longer, but they want to. Like, you don't want to sit at home till you're 100 from 60 in perfect health and whatever and do nothing, because
Yeah, and social connection has now been proven to be like the degree to which you can be socially connected to a community, to friends, and to other people has huge impact, not just on mental health for older populations, but directly on other health outcomes, and whether it's metabolic disease or other ways, and obviously some neurodegenerative diseases as well. How much do you like? I think this is also something where you've got vocal people on both camps and on both sides of the debate, but like, is there an intrinsic limit to the lifespan of human beings?
I don't think so. Maybe now, again, let's say the question is like maybe in the current state, but I don't think it's something we can't solve. Yeah, because like my view, the very simplified view is we know from all of us how the perfect, don't get it wrong, you're perfect like you are, but like how the 20-year-old Lorenzo looks like and has looked like, because it's in your DNA.
It's also in the picture that Simon picked for this talk.
So, but like your DNA is the same from the day you die, from you're born, you die. So, and something is happening. So there is no scientific reason why we're not able someone to practically make your DNA produce the 20-year-old Lorenzo. Like something is, and by the way, most of your body is like, the individual cells are very young. Like it's not that any cell in your body is none of your cell is as old as you are. Yeah. So yeah. The opposite, like they're all very young, because we sort of kind of rejuvenating just with mistakes, if you want to call it like that. Yeah, the older we get. So I don't think there is a natural limit, but I do think that if we push life expectancy, that we're gonna encounter problems. Like there are these famous like 12 hallmarks of aging, which actually very proud of, as a colleague of mine, Manuel Serrano, defined. They're going to be new ones, things we haven't even thought about when we get to 100, 110, where we're like, fuck, that happened. Like, yeah, and then we need to find solutions again.
Yeah, much like many of the sort of main killer diseases were not the same, 100 or 200 years ago, because people died a lot sooner.
Yeah, and by the way, where you see it on a smaller level, just how, again, if I say it, it's very banal, but like it's fascinating for me to see the healthcare systems coping with it. One of the where you see it is actually in Africa. So we do a little bit of investments in Africa. So when I talk to ministers of health there, they are like, hey, Till, some years ago, for HIV reasons, partly war reasons, or many reasons, the life expectancy in Africa was very low. So their healthcare systems were catering just for younger people and for their problems. So some countries, very proudly and greatly, my favorite country there is Rwanda, they have such a good healthcare policy, like HIV rate, I think below 1%, yeah, and all of that. So in a very good way, suddenly people get older and they sit there and say, hey, we never needed a cancer hospital, because when you have a society in average age 30, 35, you don't need that. If your society goes to 45, 50 in average, you suddenly need that. suddenly they're like, oh my God, there is something called dementia. Like, again, so, and you see how healthcare systems need to adapt and how complicated that is. And we will have similar things for very new things, yeah, in the Western world. But again, but that's the exciting, but that's the quest, yeah. But like, it's good to have the problem.
Yeah, new problems will emerge, and if there's one thing that human ingenuity has been great at, is effectively kind of tackling problems as they've come along, and sort of getting over them.
So one side note, just because I think I would say for to have a sort of full picture, meaning we very focus, both we mean Apeiron, but I also think this discussion at the moment, which I think, by the way, is the way to go, on how can we keep our own body and mind sort of intact, healthy, and young for long. Yeah, just so to say, there might be two other solutions. So actually, there are like three ways to gain a very long life. So the one is like, take your body, your mind, just keep it young. Yeah. Second solution would be to say, you know what? At the end, it's just the mind or just the brain. So can we take the brain and just put it on a new body? And by the way, there are companies who are thinking about that. Yeah. And then, or subform is, can we take the brain and put it on a robot? Do we actually need a human body if our brain is enough? Yeah. And then the third idea is, even, can we upload the brain to a computer and even leave the sort of human brain behind? Yeah. So I think all three ways are merit investment. Yeah. I think, though, my gut feeling is that we're going to stay in this body and that it's the easier way, but we have some other investments also in stuff like brain on sort of robots, simply like that, or uploading the brain.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the questions that emerge there.
I mean, maybe you don't even need the brain on robot. You could also put the brain
but
in
I'm saying it's
jar,
really interesting. These are interesting questions because they kind of confront us with what is me, what is the being? Because the minute you can upload your brain into something else, you can upload it into three other things. And do you have now three different individuals, or are they all the same individual? And who's you? Who is you?
There's a copy. Yeah,
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So there's so many kind of interesting, and honestly, I think that part of that goes into a discussion I would be happy to have with you or anyone else some other time around, what makes human consciousness appear, and is human consciousness the center of the self and the ego, and things that have to do with free will and fun stuff, but more philosophical. I wanted to talk about just in a different kind of on a different step about happiness and mental health, and kind of maintaining the health of our psyche, and also dealing with the changes that the environment creates on your psyche because of the events you're exposed to, and the signal, and so on. And here deal with the broad class of psychedelics. So much of what has been the modern kind of wave of looking at psychedelics has been rediscovering things that humanity has known about, or has been using, or has been in contact and potentially co-evolved with for thousands of years. I just wanted to kind of get the sense of what, obviously there's new stuff as well, and you're involved in a lot of that, and I want to hear about that, but like, how much of that is obvious, meaning that we've co-evolved with an environment and substances and plants and so on, that kind of create and have this power on the human mind.
I think there are assumptions. I think if you mean like, there is the main thing I think we're pointing to there, which I believe it could be that, did psychedelics actually spark even the human mind? Like, sort of, were we apes and then ate some psychedelics and then developed some of the core things which make us human? Yeah, it's very hard to prove because it's just too far long away. Like, and it's always risky to. So where does this come from? This idea, for example, there were graves found, I think 50,000 years ago, something like that, where there were mushrooms in a way in it that people put it in it. Yeah. But did they put it in it because they knew about the psychedelic power? Did they put it in it because they just thought it's beautiful? So the whole problem, by the way, of sort of anthropology is that sort of it's risky, but the only way we have to make deductions out of very limited findings. But I think it's highly likely because let's say if we go to the nearer history, like till 10,000 years back, 8,000 years back, where you have the first sort of descriptions in written language, yeah, of psychedelic use, like it seems to be extremely intertwined with human development.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent in an adaptive way, right? Like, if interaction between humans and psychedelic substances had been strongly maladaptive for most of human history, they probably would have stopped working to some extent. Like these effects would not have continued through our evolutionary history. There must have been reasons why these effects have persisted in the genetic pool of humans as a reaction to coming into contact with these substances. And much of that had to be somewhat adaptive.
Yes, could be. I'm just thinking if this is completely because you could also say we still react negatively to poison and have been able to adjust to it. Like it's sort of, I think it's a hint, it's not a proof. But I believe in it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm not sure I followed you on the poison.
If you say if I understood your argument right, the fact that we still react positively on psychedelics is an evolutionary hint that sort of we're linked, or was this the argument?
That there are some advantages to that. Otherwise, the people, I mean, I think that if we could have evolved resistance to certain poisons, we would have definitely evolved that resistance to poisons. Somehow those changes didn't happen. Is that what you were saying with the?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's one-to-one that if something is good for us, we keep it. Yeah. So, yeah. But I hear you. Like, look, I think it's hard to prove, but I think there is a strong inclination. We definitely know it's good to take it. That's the short. Yeah. And by the way, it seems to be, let's phrase it that way. Like I think what is I think more fascinating is, or even more fascinating, is that psychedelics seem to have, besides the sort of the hardwired scientific evidence that you can use it for mental health issues, whatever. Yeah, what sort of is not so scientific to talk about it, but very obvious that they produce a kind of spiritual sort of experience in everybody, which is the question is, at least I would say, again, it's always risky to take sort of conclusions of that, but like my personal conclusion is, at least I can say humans seem to be wired to need spirituality. Does it prove that there is something bigger than our mere existence? I believe so, but hard not to prove. Yeah, but like at least we seem to need it. Yeah, psychologically, in order to be fully functional and happy.
Also, a very long discussion I'd be happy to have anytime, but I think that kind of goes into, in my opinion, goes more into the evolutionary advantage that needing circuitry in our mind for needing an agent, a cause to anything that we perceive is the same thing that kind of gets you to believe there has to be a reason why the cosmos and the universe and everything is there. In reality, you know, if you had evolved with much less likelihood to believe that if the bush moves next to you, there's an animal in it, you'd get eaten. And so one of the things that we've really developed is this need to believe that if something happens in the world, there is a reason and a cause behind it. Same reason why the ancients believed that if the sun went from one side to the other, there had to be someone carrying it, right? So really interesting stuff. Obviously very hard to prove. What makes you excited? I mean, I feel like we could talk for 3 hours, so I want to kind of make sure that we touch on a lot of different things. What makes you excited about where the both the research on completely new psychedelics, but also on sort of the use, the approval, the kind of understanding of known substances is from a regulatory perspective and how things are changing very rapidly? What makes you the most excited around these topics?
Well, most excited is that it's happening. Like, it's not far out. Like, if everything goes well, MDMA is going to be approved sort of in the second half of this year by the FDA, and then psilocybin should follow like in the first half of next year. So within, let's say, the next, I'm going to give a little bit buffer, but I would say within the next 12 to 18 months, like two major classical psychedelics, or if MDMA is kind of not a psychedelic, but put in the category, but MDMA and psilocybin is going to be approved. And then all the other known psychedelics like DMT, 5-MeO, DMT, ibogaine will follow with approval, I would say, from now over the next 4 or 5 years latest. So in 5 years from now, therapists, doctors have a complete tool set, not just one psychedelic, but various, because for some issues, one psychedelic works better than the other. Sometimes you might want to do one first. And so it's pretty a real like tool set, and it's going to change, I deeply believe, psychiatry and mental health treatments forever, tremendously, in a tremendously positive way. Yeah, and it's happening. It's not a far out thing. It's literally happening right now.
I think people understand that there is excitement around these substances to have an impact on conditions that were hard to treat or untreatable or just hard to manage, but that people already kind of understand, like things like depression or PTSD or addiction. Are there other uses that are that are, you can still classify them as mental health, but like other effects, you know, for example, I can imagine, and you would have to educate me a little bit on here, but I can imagine we can go far back in certain civilizations and communities and see that things like peyote or other substances were used as part of rites of passage to help people grow their understanding around their world or their peers. And they weren't necessarily in that moment being used for the treatment of a condition. And I'm wondering if you see that future for psychedelics in general as getting outside of the idea of you've got a condition, I have to treat it to make you normal, and this is how you do it. But if there's a broader set of applications.
Yeah, 100%. That's the short version. Like, sort of, if I go one step back, because it's the same question is good for longevity. The same question is, by the way, good for many other things. So what I really believe, and like, I'm gonna, or I think if Mike is on the call and can chat, like you can, Mike, you can put the link into the group chat for all of you. Like, because I wrote it down because like I think it's so important what is happening in biotech in general at the moment. So I think we're seeing a really seismic shift. I don't want to. It's really massive of what are medications for. Yeah. So if you look in the last, let's say, 100 years, we had a very stiff understanding of medications are to be given if somebody is sick, and society was defining what sick means, which is, by the way, which is a very almost philosophical topic again, is a negative deviation from the norm. Yeah. So, and by the way, society can be wrong on that, because like for a long time being gay was a negative deviation from the norm and was called sick. Yeah. So it's anyway, so it's already shows how tricky the definition of sick is, because it's kind of a definition a society chooses. It's not a super objective. I mean, there are some things which are objective, like, or I think we would all agree on objective, like you have a whatever, the Black Death or whatever, but still it's so, but like, and by the way, where does it come from? I think it was rooted in one of our biggest successes in the Western world, which was the invention of antibiotics. Because before we had antibiotics, there were things which were clearly very bad, like all the infectious diseases, and you couldn't treat like holistically, you couldn't pray it away, whatever, you died. So suddenly we found antibiotics. So, but then I think a little bit made our view on, again, sickness too narrow on, oh, something needs to be wrong in your body, you have a bacteria, whatever, yeah, which doesn't fit for some stuff. So, and I think we are about to really change that definition. And so I always connect it, and I know it's a little bit of a tricky topic, but I mean it in a very positive way, with the trans movement, because that is sort of the, following the queer movement, sort of the let's say, the heights at the moment of individualism, saying, look, it's not about what other people tell you who you are, which sort of gender you identify, whatever. It's very subjective to identify. And that sort of opened up in a very positive way the view, wait a moment, why should I get medication just if a societal norm, which we're dissolving in many ways, tells me I'm sick? Why is it not that, my favorite example are psychedelics, is like, why is it not like if I would ask in the call now who identifies as depressive, meaning there may be some who said, look, unfortunately I do, but like hopefully there are many who say no. But if I turn the question, and by the way, in the old way, I could say we could all go to an online questionnaire or to a doctor, because there is literally a questionnaire, and if you fill it out, it's going to tell you, again, from a norm perspective, are you depressive or not? But if I turn it around and say who on that call is really deeply happy every day, or make it easier, who wants to be a little bit more happy, no matter how much happy you are, all of us would say, yeah, why not a little bit more? The same, by the way, we had just had the discussion on longevity, on usefulness, like sort of, so suddenly if you turn it around, medicine can be redefined as, yes, obviously there are some things you want to cure, but like in all the stuff, by the way, longevity, looks, happiness, sexuality, by the way, who doesn't want to have more sex? Like, or maybe, but at least if you want, why don't we give you medication which helps you with that, more horniness, whatever, So, and that leads to that word, which I think we're going to go in as a pharma industry, is enhancement. Like sort of many drugs going to be not just used to treat the sick in the old definition of being sick, but it's going to help people enhance themselves and model themselves in a way they please. And last word, like we already have it, by the way. And I think sometimes societal shifts you just see and say, oh, wow, yeah, this is happening, is like with Ozempic at Mounjaro. Like, 90% of people at the moment, I think, or 80 or something, but a really high number who are using it are not using it for what it's meant to be. It's meant to be originally a diabetes drug. And yes, then it was approved for weight loss, but for weight loss of clinically obese people. I'm on Ozempic. I'm not clinically obese. It's just like outsourced discipline. So, and that is the first, I think, mass market enhancement drug, which, by the way, added 500 billion market cap to Novo Nordisk and 500 billion so to Lilly roundabout. So we have a $1 trillion industry based on one single effect, is weight loss, which shows the potential and that, by the way, made the pharma industry really wake up, that it's, by the way, forget about all the, what we here wanted to call, it's utterly stupid as a pharma industry to just focus on the narrowly defined sick people if you can have drugs which literally everybody wants to take, because who doesn't want to be happier, who doesn't want to be healthier? So coming to your question of psychedelics, I think for the sheer basic demand that people want to be happier, already that warrants to say, I can totally see a world where a vast majority of people is doing a psychedelic treatment once a year, not because they needed in the old terms of being sick. They're just like, I want to be happier. Like, by the way, I'm doing it once or twice a year, and in the moment it's officially available, I'm more than happy to go to a professional setup. I don't need to grow it myself or whatever. So it's just like so easier. And then you have all the reasons why people do that. Some might just do it because they want to be happier, but then we have all the other effects, which are, again, not in the classical sense medical indications, but like we all lose creativity roundabout starting at the age of 30, which is measurable, by the way. Just society, for whatever reason, decided that the continuous loss of creativity is not a disease, it's normal. It's completely, by the way, arbitrary what we design as normal or not. So we say at the end of if it's the same, by the way, with sarcopenia. Sarcopenia, is muscle loss, So somehow society said, you know what, like a certain amount of muscle loss is okay. We call it normal. If it gets too big, then we call it a disease. I was like, why not call it originally disease? Because I don't want to lose any muscles. Yeah, I want to look like I'm 20. Yeah, and by the way, thanks to a lot of stuff I'm taking, yeah, it's coming back because there is already stuff on the market you can do, yeah, to enhance your body. Like, anyway, so you know what I say. So for all that stuff, but especially for psychedelics, I think there's so many use cases outside of the classical definition of need for medical reasons. And the pharma industry is waking up that that's the way to go because of Mounjaro, Ozempic, and co.
So I don't have much disagreement with everything you said. There was one interesting thing where you said, you know, who doesn't want to be happier? And if you could take something that makes you happier, you would be happier. This is really interesting just in terms of getting to the understanding of the neurological basis of happiness, because ultimately, if there's one thing that we are just from the state of what is and what isn't being happy, and you can look at it with MRI machines and so on, is we are always in search of homeostasis, which means that if you make me a little happier today, you're going to have to make me twice happier tomorrow just to give me the sense that I'm as happy. Like, you're constantly have to move me, meaning you need some unhappiness in order to feel happy, which is the
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Very interesting point. I think one of the things psychedelics do that they put an end to that, because they make you understand better. It's very hard to describe, but I deeply believe that psychedelics make you happy because they partly take you out of that happiness race, because they give you a deeper understanding of yourself.
So
because they're not artificial. I think the beauty of psychedelics is that they do not at all. By the way, this is why for many people they're not fun when they do it. Yeah, they're very hard or very deep, neutrally said. Yeah, I think they again, they're not manipulative at all. They're not creating a false feeling of happiness, like, by the way, MDMA does. MDMA has therapeutic effects, but I always want to say MDMA is a risky drug if you don't know what you do, because MDMA is different. MDMA is not a psychedelic. We always group it into that thing because it's very similar in terms of was once illegal, coming back now, hippies, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but MDMA creates sort of not false, but like artificial happiness. This is why MDMA can be also mildly addictive, because you crave it, you want to top it, whatever. So MDMA, again, has a very great medical use for PTSD, and especially people who hate themselves. And there's a lot of trauma where it sort of turns against you, like when you were raped, and some people internalize that and they need to heal with MDMA. So it has a really good use case, but I want to always say, like, it's not as easy as people sort of take it, literally take it outside the medical setting. But psychedelics, the real psychedelics, are not manipulative. They truly show you what makes you long-term happy, and hence, and for many people, it's, by the way, that you have to put an end to that happiness sort of spiral or craving. Yeah, and hence, I think they have this long-lasting effect.
So since we talked about performance enhancement, let's chat about the enhanced games.
Yep.
If everybody on the call knows or not, but like, tell us a little bit about what those are, how did they come about, and where are things with them? And I'm sure it's another subject that stirs up a lot of controversy.
Yes, and I love it. I love the controversy. Like, so enhanced games is an idea. All credit to my co-founder, Aaron D'Souza, is like doing. It's probably like a similar, but I want to make sure we want to be something very different. But like, from the basic setup, it's like the Olympics. We want to do it every year and whatever, but like, where it's athletics, but we're doping, colloquially called doping. I like the word performance enhancement. Are not just allowed, they kind of endorsed. We want people to do it medically. So it's not no rules. The rules are actually, you need to use medical drugs only. You cannot take crystal meth or whatever, which is, by the way, topical. I just saw that some tennis player or whatever took crystal meth and was disqualified. So was tennis, but some sports guy that did it, which is insane. But like, so we are like, hey, you need to take FDA approved medical drugs only with a doctor together. So you need to take some, practically, like, you really need to say, who's my team, like a Formula One driver, who's my engineer. And but then we allow it. By the way, side note, it's going to be one of the biggest data pools for that stuff, which is going to allow us to have a lot of sort of fast track, so like realizations in drug development. But side note, it's going to be very fascinating games, yeah, because we're going to break world records, and we want to see it as a celebration for what the human body can achieve already now with the help of science. And the first game is going to be next year, second half, with 10 disciplines. We're going to start. So I think it fits perfectly in this world I just described, like where we're shifting the view of medication from treating just the sick to allowing people to redefine themselves.
What do you think are, and I'm asking not in the context of like practical health, because I think that you are you're on the right track in terms of making sure that certain risks are managed, but what are the broader risks that you see as potential? And I'm sure that you said the benefits outweigh the risk, but what are the downside and the potential risk of something like the enhanced games, maybe even from a public opinion reaction?
Well, first of all, like from a public opinion reaction, I'm always hoping that there is a lot of controversy. I always worry there's too little of it, yeah, because we're living in a marketing world. That's a consumer thing. It's a sports event, by the way. It's not meaning we're gonna have a lot of value for science, but the enhanced games in itself, the business as well, is a sports business. We're building a new sports league. And the more people talk about it, yeah, the better for us. So every time the IOC says something mean, I want to send them flowers, because it's like another headline with our name in it. Like for a sports business, for an entertainment business, it's all about clicks. Yeah. So which is great, by the way, because it's a lose-lose situation for the IOC. So they think we're evil, and I'm like, yes, go on with it. More press releases is great for us. So that's sort of that level. So if you want to talk about real concerns I take serious, or what do I have answers? There is just two real things. The one is like when people say, oh, are you putting these athletes at risk? Yeah, because somehow in the mind of people, because of a wrong media perception, is that sort of doping, yeah, the bad word, or performance enhancement are risky. My answer is always, let's start, by the way, and that's the answer for many things, by the way, is like, can we please define risk? Because people throw out that word and say, oh, this is risky, this is not risky. But when you poke them and you're like, okay, before I answer, please, which risk do you mean quantified, qualified? They can't, yeah, because we're just using risk very loosely. So, and I always go back to my favorite chart, and whoever has seen it, please Google it. It's from my friend David Nutt, the big sort of one of the elders, hopefully he's okay with that, psychedelics researchers, neuroscientists, because David in 2008 did a very independent, never disputed, very scientific study, which he turned into a book, but the chart is everything you need to know, where he looked at all recreational drugs, or all drugs which are also used recreationally. So from heroin to alcohol to steroids, yeah, and really did a proper risk assessment, starting with quantifying risk. So he made really a model what risk is. Can you die? Can you get disabled? Can you get addicted? Whatsoever. And if you look at it very scientifically, again, never disputed, the number one risky drug in the world is alcohol, closely followed by heroin, and crystal meth and all what is bad. But alcohol is the worst, which we're selling everywhere. Yeah. And at the other side of the chart, practically zero risk to very low risk, is magic mushrooms, practically zero risk. Yeah, LSD, practically zero risk. All the psychedelics, but also anabolic steroids, because factually they have very low risk if taken properly with a doctor and not too much. So most of the stories we have in our mind about the bad word doping is either complete bullshit. By the way, it's the same like when I started talking about psychedelics in 2014, 99% of the people thought I'm insane, but also like they were all, by the way, scientists, not just like really legit people were like, they make a hole in your brain, or every 10, no, seriously, you're laughing now, but like people, that was I was confronted with. So there were really like what I could call urban legends, which were just completely wrong.
I know, like the whole "this is your mind on drugs" kind of thing.
Yeah. So, or if I go to anabolic steroids, which all the stuff, like, to make it clear, my balls haven't shrunk. Yeah. So why? Because like a lot of the things which are not true at all, but the things which are maybe true are things which happen when you take 30 times too much. Like, by the way, unfortunately, there are people who are stupid enough in anything to grossly overdose. But I tell you, like, when you grossly overdose performance enhancement drugs, you're going to have a problem. When you overdose alcohol, you're going to be dead. Yeah, so it's still not as bad as alcohol. Yeah, but never overdose. This is why I always come back. I put it in the blog post, by the way. I put the blog post into the chat for everybody who wants to read it. Yeah, I put it in it like, so I'm this weird in my mind, like mixture of conservative and libertarian. I want people to really have access to a lot of things, but just with a doctor together, because you need to know what you do, you need to measure what you do, you need to have professional advice. So they're sort of, and by the way, but I think for everything. So in my dream world, yeah, or if I would be able, because I think it would be good for society, I would make all drugs, including alcohol, just medically available, and then go to your doctor and explain him why you need alcohol. Yeah, so so that would be, because people need that counterpart, because we are unfortunately very ill-disciplined, yeah, around our own body. But it's another discussion. But long story short, so any form of performance enhancements, anabolic steroids, testosterone, human growth hormones, like all these, yeah, are, if taken properly with a doctor together in normal amounts, yeah, are very, very low risk. So the second one I want to mention, because I also think it shows how bizarrely we in society mix up sort of things, is like a lot of critique was like, will the enhanced games actually sort of kind of make young people take more, yeah, of whatever performance enhancements? So are we having a bad influence on young people? I was like, first of all, the worst influence is really like going through an airport and seeing all the hard, it's not even soft, it's like tequila, vodka, it's the hard stuff which jumps in your face area. I always say as a test, just think every time you see a hard liquor, there is heroin on it. Would you think it's good for your children if you go through an airport? Yeah. And then the other big thing is obviously social media, because at the moment, by not talking about performance enhancements, we give young people the view that all the Instagram influencers, male and female, look like that because they're lucky, or maybe they train a bit. Yeah. And obviously all the shirtless bodies you see on Instagram are 100%, I would go through most of them, yeah, at least had a little bit of help. Yeah. So, and by talking openly about it, that there is a certain thing we just achieve when you have a little bit of help, makes actually the view on our bodies much more realistic. Because I think a lot of young people break at the moment because they think it's somehow achievable and almost think it's somehow a necessity to look like that. The truth is they will never look like that if you don't take a little bit of help. So I rather talk about it. I have two godsons who are 12 and 14, and we have that discussion. And look, if you want to look like that guy you think is normal, yeah, rather talk to me. And they know it before actually your mind spiraled and you think you're not normal and all of that. So the problem is a different one, and we are kind of rather the solution than creating more. So these are the two real, but I take them serious. These are the two things I want to educate people about: the non-existent risk of performance-enhancing drugs if taken properly via the enhanced games, and talk about the unrealistic picture we create about what is naturally possible versus what is maybe enhanced possible.
So the question that I have, and the last question, because I think we're running out of time, but like, do you see, like, I think when I think about this, you know, I largely agree with everything you said, but I think because we know how people as consumers of sports events and of anything kind of behave, if the enhanced games really take on and you basically have all these world records that are broken and so on, it somehow reduces potentially the interest that people will or would have around the non-enhanced results. Like, it just might happen that it might become that watching a sports event of non-enhanced athletes is just less thrilling, interesting, or whatever than it would be to watch one of enhanced athletes. And does that have anything, does that take away anything? Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just like, is there, it's a little bit like the AI photography and the non-AI photography right now. I'm a strong believer that there is a huge space and huge artistic value in the AI as a tool for photography. The question is, does it take anything away from the value and the skill and the craft of someone who's waiting for the perfect moment to capture that photo or not?
Honestly, but I really don't know. Like obviously I could say, as the enhanced games, I always say like, hopefully we are the number one. But like in a broader sense, because I'm thinking about a lot, like it's a total different topics, but what gonna humans do when AI is practically doing everything better? Which, by the way, is not 20 years away. Maybe it's 10 years away. Yeah, or many things. So, and my bet is that one thing is that, A, we're gonna just have more free time and we're gonna go back to what we were before the agricultural revolution. By the way, which is, by the way, is not frightening at all, because like people are like, oh my God, what I'm gonna do? Like if you think back, before we became agriculture humans, we were hunter-gatherers. And like, what did hunter-gatherers do? They needed 2 to 3 hours max a day to make a living, so to work. So they had kind of like 21, 22 hours per day for sleep, sex, and telling each other stories. That's why we're so gossipy. That's why we love storytelling, because that's what we really are. And I think we're going to go back to that, yeah, which is great. But at the same time, I think we're going to suddenly value, what's the English term, artisan products, like real things, actually more, because in a world of digital things, maybe we suddenly, so it could even be that, not jinx it, not my word, but like for 10 years, enhanced games going to be great. And then suddenly, because the whole world's becoming enhanced in so many ways, people are going to go back and say, now I want to actually see how were we 10, 20 years ago when we did have no enhancement. And suddenly the sort of original games become cool again. Like, so I don't know, like, and I think neutrally there is a great place for both the enhanced games and the Olympic Games. The only thing I want to say, there is a great place for the Olympic Games if they become finally, which they're not, true to what they should be, because they define themselves as the natural games. But fun fact is 44% of all Olympian athletes dope anyway. And that's not my number, that's their number. Yeah. So I'm telling them, actually, don't shit on us. Like, we want to be something different.
Your own house.
Actually, try to make your games what they really should be, the clean ones, you have the enhanced ones, and it's going to be both two very fun events.
And just like the question on disease, it's very arbitrary, because you can look at the Olympic Games and see the increase in human performance over the last 50 years. And so much of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is due to technological progress, like to basically different shoes, different swimwear, different types of training, and things that just are effectively human enhancement of just a different kind.
100%. And they just arbitrarily say, oh, this one is good, like coffee is okay, this one is not. WADA is completely arbitrary, by the way. And many things are on the doping list, by the way, which you can buy at GNC, which all of us most likely take. Yeah. So totally agree. Yeah, if they should be really, but then the question is, what is natural? Like, by the way, because if you go back to the really ancient Olympian Games, you find so many texts how they tried to choose up. They just had less technology, but they were like eating liver because they kind of knew it's like, yeah, to taking, by the way, psychedelics, exactly. Like sort of, there were crazy ideas because they tried. So it was not that the original Olympics were actually, I would say almost the original Olympics resembled more the enhanced games. They were picking their champions and then trying to add on to them. They just didn't have the technology to do so in a sophisticated way, but they tried. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're out of time. I had fun. I hope you did too.
Yes.
Thanks to everybody for being here. I feel like we could talk for another 3 hours. So it was nice to finally have a conversation directly, Christian.
Yeah, and someone we can do it on other topics like religion or whatever. I'm always up for these. Hopefully, like if there were questions, we could have answered them. But like I know we're out of time. I love that stuff. So yeah. But
Simon,
thank you everybody for
else?
dialing in.
No, really just thank you guys. I mean, it's so nice to speak to two true Renaissance men who can think about topics like biotech or science really within a broader context of philosophy, religion, spirituality. It has been such a joy to listen to you both and to hear your perspectives on these things. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.